Hi guys, and welcome to the Q&A session. Sorry it's taken me a few days longer than I thought it would do to get this video out to you. Basically I've just been busy working on the Ember Effect, and I'm sure you'll appreciate how long it takes to make an episode for Episode Interactive. Before we get to the questions here, I just want to say that there will be spoilers. There's going to be spoilers for the Phoenix Prophecy and the Sakura sequence. So if you haven't reached the end of the Phoenix Prophecy and the end of the Trinity Awakening, you probably will find that the kind of end part of those two stories will be spoiled. So make sure you've finished those before continuing to watch this Q&A. So there we go. Let's get to the first question. And thank you, by the way, to everybody who did ask a question on Instagram. We got some fantastic ones here. First one from Books, Music, Trees. Is Tanner really dead? So anyone that's finished the Phoenix Prophecy will know the ending that happens in episode 35. So actually a lot of these questions will be redundant now because they were asked before 35 was released. I actually didn't think 35 was going to be released this quickly from Pocket Gems. I thought it might be another week or so. But I'm glad you guys got it anyway. So I'll ignore that one for now because I'm sure you all know the answer to that already. Here we go. So Jellyfish from Earth 4444. What will the Ember Effect be about? So the Ember Effect is about a girl named Ember Edwards, and she goes to school in London, United Kingdom. She's bullied in school and she has a terrible life, and even her parents treat her badly. And then on the night of her prom, her leaving prom, when she's finished in school, she finds a hidden classroom in the school with a doorway in it into another world. And she goes through this doorway and she's able to start a new life in this new world called Eterna. And yeah, I don't want to give anything else away really yet because I don't want to spoil the thing. So that's all I can say for now, but that's the basic premise anyway. Okay, next question. So Love is Life Official. Why has Books, Music, Trees just completely ruined the rest of the Phoenix Prophecy for me? I was hoping Tanner wouldn't die. Yeah, unfortunately, the thing about social media is that it's just an absolute spoiler fest. So I apologise for that. Episode Dark Angels, what will the Ember Effect be about? So I've just answered that one, and I think that this user realised that it had been asked already, so I'll skip that one. So next question, where did you get the idea to write the Phoenix Prophecy and the Ember Effect? So the Phoenix Prophecy, that basically just came from me wanting to write a more traditional dystopian story as opposed to the Sakura sequence, which it kind of fits less neatly into that category. It's still kind of dystopian, but it's not quite as kind of like the government is not quite as ruthless maybe, and there's general peace in the world of the Sakura sequence for the time being. So yeah, I just wanted to write something more kind of akin to something like the Hunger Games or Divergent, something like that. So that was where the idea for that came from, just from reading those kind of stories. The Ember Effect, actually, I came up with the idea for the Ember Effect. I think it was back in 2011 or 2012, possibly when I was in work in Waterstones in the bookstore where I've worked for the last 10 years. And it just popped into my head. And I originally thought that I would make it into a novel. And then later on, I thought I would make it into some kind of script for a video game. And this was before I became a writer for Episode. And as soon as I did, I thought this is going to be the perfect idea to convert into an Episode interactive script. So after I finished the Phoenix Prophecy, I spent 2 weeks with my notebook, a blank notebook, and just jotting down, just kind of fleshing out those original ideas that I had all the way back then, and creating it into something that I could fulfill as a Episode interactive script. So yeah, that was where those two ideas came from. Okay, next question. Angel's Undercover Episode. Did you base your amazing character Sakura off of anybody in particular? So the answer to this is yes. Sakura was mainly based off myself. We do share one physical trait, which is something, I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, called heterochromia, where you have eyes which are slightly different colours to each other. So my left eye I don't know, I don't even, I'm trying to think which way around it is now. One of my eyes is slightly lighter than the other eye. And anyway, I put that, it was an attribute to Sakura as well, and I managed to work that into the story of the Sakura sequence. But yeah, that's just the only physical trait, because he's got kind of blondish hair. But we're both also quite short. Yeah. But apart from that, the main similarity between me and Sakura is that as a teenager, we're both quite shy and unsure of ourselves, especially to begin with. So when I was in school, I was at points really painfully shy and just nervous and, full of anxiety and everything like that. I feel like I've overcome that for the most part now. I feel absolutely fine now. And I'm hoping that Sakura's going to have the same kind of journey. So in the beginning of City of the Falling Sky, he's a really kind of unsure character. He's absolutely petrified of things like going on his first date and all that. And throughout the books, he's going to kind of grow as a character and become a much more self-assured, much more confident, and just a much kind of more well-rounded human being, basically. Okay, next question. This is from Get That Girl Official. What's your number one writing to? Now, I got a feeling that this question was the victim of autocorrect on their phone, because I'm not entirely sure what that means, so I'm going to skip that one for now. Next one from Angel's Undercover episode again. When writing, how do you keep your characters from merging? Or in other words, how do you get their personalities to stay their own? I am horrible at keeping one character sarcastic, whilst the others are angry, upset, etc. Writers like you inspire me to keep working for my own ambitions of becoming a writer. Well, first of all, thanks a lot. That's fantastic that I'm inspiring people to become writers. It's an amazing career. I'm absolutely loving being a full-time writer now. I've only just become a full-time writer, and yeah, I love it. So I would encourage anybody to do it. To the question, this is a really good question actually, because I don't think I've ever been asked this before, but it is something that I do worry about myself as well. So how do you keep your characters from all kind of seeming the same, I suppose? And the answer to that, I think, is to create a backstory for each of them. So even if the information is never revealed to the reader, as long as you've got that backstory written down somewhere yourself and it's in your own head, I think that the dialogue will just flow as you're writing more naturally than if you're kind of unsure of these characters' backgrounds. So yeah, but it is something that I feel like I struggle with myself sometimes. But yeah, that's I think the best way I can say to combat that, really. But yeah, it's an excellent question, and one I don't really have an absolute answer for. But yeah, that's the best thing I can recommend. Okay, next question from Cassie Quinn. What makes you want to write? So I was a reluctant reader, believe it or not, until I was about 14 or 15. And my mum bought these books for me called Broken Sky by Chris Wooding. Unfortunately, they've gone out of print now, which is crazy because they were amazing books. And they were the first books that really I absolutely loved them. And they had kind of like an anime style cover. And I loved watching anime and reading some manga at the time. And that was what drew me to them initially. And as soon as I started reading, I was absolutely hooked. And then I think as soon as you find that one book that hooks you, you're hooked on reading then for good. And I just continued to read all the kind of big teenage fiction titles at the time. So it was things like Harry Potter, His Dark Materials, Mortal Engines, what else was there? The Wind on Fire. And as soon as I started reading all these big teenage titles, I just knew that I wanted to write teenage fiction. And ever since then I've been writing something or other. Before the Sakura sequence, I actually have about 7 unfinished attempts at novels where I wrote half of them and then got a bit lost halfway through. But yeah, ever since I was 14 or 15, I've been writing non-stop, and it was that initial kind of love of reading that got me writing. So that's what made me want to write. So next question. So next question is from a user called Gummy Fat. So quite a name, isn't it? Who or what inspires you to write? So I just spoke about what inspires me to write. And like I said as well, the main person that inspired me to write all the way back then when I was 14 or 15 was my mum, because she got me into reading, and she was determined that she was going to get me transformed from a reluctant reader into a reader, and she managed it. So thank you so much, Mum. Okay, so next question. What are some... Oh, sorry, I missed one here. I Love Official. Where do you get your ideas? Okay, so I get my ideas from a lot of places, as any writer does. A lot of the time, it seems like they just pop into your head, even though they have come from somewhere specific, but you can't really pinpoint where. So it'll be a mix of things like things that's happened in your own life, and things that you may have seen on TV. But yeah, the main way that I get a lot of my ideas is from watching other kind of narratives. So let's say I was watching a TV show, something like Lost or Heroes, which are some of my favorite kind of TV series of recent times. And if a certain thing in the show affected me, I would write down what happened, and then I would kind of try and break that down in a notebook into the core mechanics of what was happening, and that way I'll understand what kind of plot devices were being used to kind of get me to feel that emotion at that particular point in time. And then once I've kind of figured out what was actually happening in like a narrative sense, then I would kind of use that then in one of my own stories, but using my own characters, my own settings, my own things that are happening, you know. So yeah, I would recommend, if you feel any really strong emotions while you're watching something or reading another person's book, just write down exactly what's happening and just try and really work out what is going on there narratively, and then you should be able to apply that to your own characters then in your own stories. Okay, next question. This is from Dorm Room 101. What are some good things to include in a story? Okay, so I would recommend, if you're just starting out, keeping to the kind of traditional elements of a good story. So have a protagonist who you can root for, because some successful stories do have an anti-hero, but I would not recommend going that route to begin with. I think that's probably better left for people who have a lot of experience in writing. It's much easier to write a story with good-natured protagonists that everybody can root for from the beginning. Another thing to include is always have an evil villain. It seems like an obvious thing, but to have one main evil villain that you can hate, that the reader can hate. And as long as you've got that initial thing where you have a good protagonist, an evil villain, and you have some kind of climactic battle at the end of the book, you've got a safe bet there, I would say. Okay, next question. This is from AlecQC19. When is the next book for the Sakura sequence? Okay, so unfortunately, I don't have an exact date for any of you. I am writing a little bit of it every day, and it's going fantastic. All I can say is that I'm really pleased with the story so far, and yeah, I don't really have any more information for you, unfortunately, but just I hope you guys can hang in there. It's going really well, and I can't wait to give you some more kind of specific news about it. Okay, next question. So this is from C. Andy C. And it is, what are going to be the major character developments in Fate of the Fractured? Now, first of all, before I answer this, I just want to give a big shout out to this user. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Andresa. She has been following me on Twitter from the very start. So this was back, I think, in 2011 when I first released City of the Falling Sky. And she's been there the whole way through, supporting me and tweeting me. And she even made a cosplay hat from one of the characters from the Sakura sequence. So thank you so much for all your support over the years. Okay, so to the question, what are going to be the major character developments in Fate of the Fractured? So I don't want to give too much away, but the one thing I can say is you will learn a lot more about Wilbus Valonqar, who is the guy who was pretending to be Eric's father in the Trinity Awakening. You'll also learn a lot more about Paul and Eric's upbringing. So those are the main things and the main character developments you'll get. Of course, you'll have the usual stuff with the main group. So next question from CNDC again. Also, how many TSS books do you plan to write? So this one's a simple answer, 5. There's going to be 5 Sakura sequence books. Next question from Episode Incorporated. What inspired you to write your book series and episode stories? So I've kind of spoke about what inspired me to write the episode stories. So I'll just talk about what inspired me to write the Sakura sequence. And to be honest, I think the main thing in terms of literary inspiration, it was Harry Potter. And anybody who's read the first 2 Sakura sequence books will probably see some massive similarities. So things like the structure. So each book of the Sakura sequence follows 1 year of Sakura's life, similar to how Harry Potter works, where it follows 1 year of Harry's life. And you have the usual kind of events in school with a big kind of Christmassy event in the middle. Also, of course, you have friction in the Sakura sequence, which is very similar to how Quidditch works in Harry Potter. So it's kind of like an interlude in the center of each book. Not so much kind of intertwined with the main story arc of the novels, but it's a nice kind of break from the kind of darker tones of the main story, and it's just a little bit of fun, really. So yeah, the main thing is Harry Potter. Okay, next question, again from the same user. When is the Ember Effect coming out? Now this is something I get asked a lot on Instagram, and I actually don't know. The way it works is I submit my episodes to Pocket Gems, and it goes through a QA process, quality assurance. So they will test my chapters and make sure there's no spelling errors, grammar errors, and kind of technical glitches and things like that, and bugs. And once those are all stamped out, then they go live to you guys. But of course, a lot of chapters get submitted to Pocket Gems, every week. So some weeks when I submit some chapters, you'll get them the following week, and sometimes it could be a few weeks later. Now, I am planning on submitting episodes 1 to 6, possibly. It's either 1 to 5 or 1 to 6. It depends on whether I finish episode 6 by tomorrow. I'll be submitting those tomorrow, and then hopefully you guys will have at least the first couple of chapters playable towards the end of this month, I would hope, but I honestly have no idea. It's completely out of my control when I send them off. So anyway, hopefully by the end of March, we'll see. Okay, next question. So this is from Anna Victoria Miller. Are you freaking going to do a sequel to the Phoenix Prophecy? So this is something I do get asked a lot. And the answer is possibly. Yeah, I mean, there's no reason why not, apart from it depends on whether Pocket Gems will allow me to, basically. So I don't know if they'll think it's a good idea or not. I mean, it has been really successful and really popular, so hopefully, you never know. But I would enjoy writing a sequel, so we'll see. I'll keep you guys updated. Okay, next question. How do you come up with the awesome ideas for a title like The Phoenix Prophecy and The Ember Effect? How do you find these names? They even rhyme. And one more thing, what genre is the Ember Effect going to be under? Okay, so what I think this user means is the alliteration I have in my titles as opposed to the rhyming. So this is where the first letter of each word is the same. So I just love alliteration. I always have done. It's a kind of it's an old trick, really. It just sounds nice. It just sounds great. It sounds catchy. It makes you remember something more if there's alliteration in a title. If you think of something like Donnie Darko, So yeah, the Ember Effect. No reason apart from it just sounds great. In terms of coming up with the actual names of the characters that go into the titles, I literally just Google girls' names, and just brings up a list of hundreds of names, and I just go through the list and I just find something that sounds out of the ordinary, something that sounds really interesting, and that is just how I found Phoenix and Ember. And what genre is the Ember Effect going to be under? So the Ember Effect is going to be in the fantasy category on Episode, the same as the Phoenix Prophecy, because of the whole thing with the other dimension and all that. Okay, next question. If Sakura can actually destroy things, can't he just destroy Lux? So this is an interesting one. And the answer to this, it is actually answered in Fate of the Fractured, and this is something that comes up quite a lot. I don't want to talk about it too much so it doesn't spoil anything, but the main thing about this is that just remember that Lux can create matter. So Lux can create matter, and he's actually kind of mastered his art more than Sakura has mastered his. So he can create matter at a faster rate than Sakura can destroy it, which means that he can regenerate his own body at a faster rate than Sakura can destroy it. So it kind of makes him almost immortal to a point. Next question from the same user. Is the Ember Effect going to be like the Phoenix Prophecy? What is the plot? So yeah, I've kind of spoken about the plot, and you will find a lot of similarities between the Ember Effect and the Phoenix Prophecy, especially in the way that the kind of interactive elements worked. So actually Pocket Gems have asked me to add in even more kind of gamey elements, because I think it was really popular where I kind of would have you collecting items and stuff like that. So you'll find even more of that, and hopefully there won't be any bugs in the story this time like there was with the whole thing about the collecting firewood in the forest. Yeah, sorry about that again, guys. That was my own fault. I had a cold that week, and my head was pounding, and yeah, I just remember finishing that episode and thinking, oh my god, I hope I've done that correctly, because I couldn't think straight. And yeah, as a result, there was one line missing, and it was just the line where I needed to reset Phoenix's character points to 0, and I just missed it out completely, and that's what caused that whole kerfuffle. Okay, next question. So, when is chapter 35 going to be available? I'm dying to know and read. So, the great thing is, you should have already had that by now. So that's fantastic. Next question again is another one saying, when will 35 be available? Next one again is about the final chapter as well. Okay, so the next one, CNDC again. Can you think of one word to describe each main character in Fate of the Fractured? And now, finally, one question about the Ember Effect. What will be the plot? So yeah, we've just talked about the plot of the Ember Effect. And yeah, thinking of one word to describe each main character of the Fate of the Fractured, that's going to be a bit of a mission, I think. So maybe I'll get back to that at some point, but I don't think I can think off the top of my head for that one now. How do you come up with your stories? What is the creative process behind your work? Now, I can answer this one. So my creative process starts with planning, and I would recommend that anybody who is thinking of writing any kind of story to just plan as much as you can beforehand. The more you plan, the easier it is to write, and you'll barely ever get writer's block, really, because you'll know exactly where the story's going, and as long as you have the story planned all the way up until the ending and you know how it's going to end, you shouldn't come across any writer's block. So yeah, what I usually do is I go out and I buy a brand new notebook for every story. And a lot of you guys have asked where I get my notebooks from, because they are really nice looking notebooks. And the answer is Waterstones in the UK. I think there's a few more Waterstones in Europe as well. I don't think you guys have got any Waterstones in the USA. But the company that makes them is called Paper Blanks. So maybe another retailer would stock those around the world. So yeah, Paper Blanks, look them up online. Maybe you can get one online, but they're absolutely beautiful. So yeah, I buy a brand new blank notebook, and I just start jotting down plot ideas. So before I even have the characters or the settings set in place, I would write things down such as the protagonist goes back in time and it turns out that they are actually some kind of historical figure that did a massive good deed kind of thing. So you can kind of see how I was able to incorporate that into City of the Falling Sky. So I just jot down plot ideas first before I even know the characters' names. So that's what I do originally. And then after that, then I start writing, and I still continue to plan, because what happens is, as you start writing, you'll come up with, you'll kind of meet some kind of challenges and situations that you haven't already planned, and then you just go back to your notebook and you just flesh those bits out. So it's kind of, when you start writing, you're still constantly planning all the time, and you'll end up just having a smooth kind of run through the whole thing then. Okay, next question. When will the next episode of Phoenix Prophecy come out? And are you sleeping with a gun now that Tanner died, out of fear that someone will attempt to murder you in your sleep? Well, thankfully, the final chapter did come out, and hopefully episode 35 will mean that I don't have to sleep with a gun under my pillow. And I live in the UK anyway, where gun possession is illegal. So yeah, I never was sleeping with a gun under my pillow, just because, I would have been arrested. But I was fearing for my life at one point. Okay, next question. How do you get inspiration when writing a story? So I think I've kind of covered that already. Next question, can you give me the Phoenix Prophecy link? Now, this is something I do get asked quite a lot as well. A lot of people are asking for the links to my stories. Because my story is an official story on the app, it's not classed as a user story, I actually don't get a link. I know in your guys' writers' portals, you get like a link underneath your story on your story's homepage. That's absolutely not there on my homepage. And I literally don't have a link to give you guys, even if I wanted to. So the way to find my stories is to load up the app and go into the categories, and they'll be in the fantasy section there. Okay, and the final question from Phoenix Prophecy Official is, are there twists in the final chapter, or is it more like an epilogue? So I think this was posted before the final chapter was released, although I think this user possibly hasn't had the final chapter yet. I'll have to check with them. So anyway, that will be revealed as soon as you get the final chapter. And yes, there is one big twist in there. And I just want to give a shout out to this user, Phoenix Prophecy Official. They've made a fan account for the Phoenix Prophecy, so please go and follow them. It's fantastic that somebody's taken the time to make a fan account for the Phoenix Prophecy, and thank you so much for doing that. And yeah, that's the end of the questions. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this Q&A session. I've really enjoyed it. Some fantastic things that I've answered here. And yeah, I'm not entirely sure what my next video is going to be. I have been working on a kind of logo sting for the Ember Effect, so maybe I'll upload that soon. And other than that, I will see you next time.